Virgin tech millionaire left his pregnant wife. 5 years later, he sees her at the bus stop and is emotional. He followed them at a distance, raindrops sliding down his neck. Leah gripped the boy's hand tighter as they turned into an apartment complex that made Nathan's throat tighten. When was the last time you realized someone you once loved had been struggling while you thrived? Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. The light turned green, but Nathan Cole's world stopped. 5 years of running from his biggest mistake ended at a Seattle bus stop where his ex-wife stood shivering, holding the hand of a boy who had his eyes. He gripped the steering wheel tighter, luxury leather creaking under his fingers. $20 million in the bank. A corner office overlooking San Francisco Bay. A fiancée who graced tech magazine covers. None of it mattered as he stared at the woman he'd abandoned and the child he'd never met. Seattle's winter rain pounded his car like accusations, windshield wipers keeping time with his racing heart. The boy, his son, wore a backpack with frayed straps. Leah's coat looked too thin for December, her breath visible in the frigid air. "Move it, jackass," someone honked behind him. Nathan pulled to the curb, watching them through rain-streaked glass. His mind flashed to their last night together. Her body curled against his, her whispered news about the baby, his silent panic when his phone buzzed with warnings about the corporate betrayal unfolding. By morning, he'd convinced himself leaving was protecting her. 5 years of distance collapsed in seconds. He opened his car door. The cold hit him like judgment. "Leah," he called, his voice almost lost in traffic noise. She turned, recognition freezing her features. The boy looked up curiously, Nathan's eyes, wide with innocent question. "Nathan." Her voice carried 5 years of hardened edges. Have you ever had a moment where your past confronted you unexpectedly? That split second where you must decide, face what you've done or drive away forever. What would you choose? Nathan stepped forward, designer shoes splashing through puddles. "I didn't know. I never thought." When Leah finally spoke, her words cut through him like ice. 5 years too late, Nathan. "We stopped waiting for you a long time ago." But as she turned to leave, the boy looked back, with eyes that mirrored his own, asking a question Nathan wasn't prepared to answer. Nathan had built a $20 million empire, but couldn't afford the look in his son's eyes. Curiosity without recognition. He followed them at a distance, raindrops sliding down his neck. Leah gripped the boy's hand tighter as they turned into an apartment complex that made Nathan's throat tighten. Peeling paint, security door with broken hinges, hallway lights flickering like dying fireflies. How had she ended up here? The Leah he remembered deserved mansions. Not this place where water stains marked the ceiling and neighbors' arguments filtered through paper-thin walls. His mind flashed to their first meeting, Atlanta conference, her working the registration desk, to pay tuition, him stumbling over words when she smiled. They'd been married 6 months later in a courthouse ceremony. Her white sundress, his nervous hands, the way she laughed when he dropped the ring. "Come on, Ethan. Homework before dinner," he heard her say as they reached their door. Ethan, his son, had a name, a life, a world constructed entirely without him. Nathan ducked into a stairwell as they disappeared inside. Why did he have to disrupt them? He'd chosen exits over entrances 5 years ago when investors whispered about distractions and liabilities, when media outlets printed gold digger beneath Leah's photo. When was the last time you realized someone you once loved had been struggling while you thrived? Drop a heart if you've ever wanted to right a wrong that seemed impossible to fix. His phone vibrated, reality intruding. Victoria's name flashed on screen, his fiancée wondering when he'd return from his quick Seattle business trip. The engagement announcement was scheduled for next week's tech gala. Her father's venture capital firm had revived his company after the scandal. Before he could approach their door, his phone lit up, his fiancée's name flashing like a warning. The life he'd carefully constructed was 1,500 miles away, while his son, the boy who didn't know him, was just 15 feet behind that weathered door. The diamond on his fiancée's finger cost more than Leah's entire apartment. But as he stared at the video call, Nathan couldn't remember why he'd bought it. The caterers need final numbers by tomorrow. Victoria was saying, her perfect blowout gleaming under Malibu lighting. And Daddy wants to announce the merger at the same time as our engagement. Brilliant PR move, don't you think? Nathan nodded, barely hearing her as he gazed out his hotel window at Seattle's rainy skyline. Somewhere out there, a boy named Ethan was eating dinner, doing homework, living a life that should have included him. Nathan, are you even listening? Victoria's voice sharpened. Saw the long day of meetings. The lie came easily, too easily. After ending the call, Nathan opened his laptop, fingers hovering over the keyboard. He hesitated only briefly before typing. Leah Morgan, Seattle. Digital breadcrumbs appeared. A LinkedIn profile showing she'd never finished her degree, working instead at a medical billing office. No social media presence. A rental application from 3 years ago. Nothing about a child. He dug deeper, finding court records of a restraining order against someone named Marcus Wells 2 years ago. Medical bills sent to collections. A custody application. His hotel suite overlooked the Seattle skyline, lights glittering like the future he'd chosen, while across town, in windows he couldn't see, his past breathed in darkness. Have you ever found yourself living a life that looked perfect on paper but felt empty inside? What did you sacrifice for success that you wish you could reclaim? Nathan touched his phone screen, Victoria's smiling face contrasting with memories of Leah. How she'd look at him during intimate moments, seeing past his achievements to something raw and real underneath. Victoria saw the CEO. Leah had known the man. His laptop chimed with a notification. The search algorithm he'd created had found something buried in court records. The notification popped up on his screen, search complete. Leah Morgan, custody battle, hospital records. His finger hovered over the link, knowing that whatever he discovered next would make it impossible to return to the life he'd built on running away. The hospital records loaded on his screen, pregnancy complications, emergency C-section, baby in NICU, all dated 1 week after he'd signed those divorce papers. Nathan's hand trembled on the mouse as medical terminology blurred through tears he couldn't control. Preeclampsia, hemorrhage, critical condition, mother stabilized after transfusion, infant male, for pounds 3 ounces, respiratory distress. She had almost died giving birth to his son while he was on a private jet to California, convincing himself he was protecting her from scandal. Jesus Christ, he whispered, scrolling through weeks of NICU updates. Breathing tube, feeding issues, jaundice. Mother staying 24/7 despite discharge recommendation. A photo attachment showed a tiny red creature amid wires and monitors. His son's first portrait, no proud father in the frame, just medical equipment keeping him alive. Nathan scrolled further, finding discharge papers signed by Leah alone. Emergency readmission 3 days later when the baby stopped breathing at home. Another week in hospital. Social worker notes. Single mother, no family support, financial concerns, sleeping in chair by infant's bed. Where'd he been? Building firewalls against media inquiries. Accepting Victoria's father's investment offer. Rebuilding his reputation while Leah fought alone for their child's life. Dawn broke over Seattle as Nathan read the final medical report. Pink light touching the window like gentle accusation, illuminating the tears he hadn't realized were falling onto his keyboard. What's the worst thing you've discovered about how your actions affected someone you once loved? Could you forgive yourself? Could they? He remembered their last intimate night. Her soft skin under his hands, whispered promises against her neck. The way she'd looked at him with complete trust. They'd created life that night, and he'd walked away from both of them when that life was most vulnerable. The last document wasn't medical, it was legal. Custody papers where Leah had named their son Ethan Nathan Morgan. She'd given their boy his name, even after everything. But the second name on the custody petition wasn't his. It belonged to someone called David Winters. David Winters had been there when Nathan wasn't, during labor, through nights in the NICU, for first steps and first words, making Nathan not just an absent father, but a replaceable one. Nathan scrolled through public records, stomach churning with each discovery. David Winters, pediatric nurse, 34, divorced, no children. Worked at the same hospital where Ethan was born. First appeared in Leah's life during those critical NICU weeks when she had no one else. Employment records showed David had transferred to Seattle Children's Hospital 3 years ago. The same time Leah and Ethan moved north. They'd build a life together while Nathan built empires. He slammed his laptop shut, grabbed his coat, and drove through morning traffic to her apartment. The rage felt better than guilt, cleaner, more righteous. He pounded on her door, not caring about neighbors or hour. When Leah opened it, dressed for work in plain blue scrubs, shock replaced exhaustion on her face. "What are you doing here?" Her voice barely contained fury. "Who's David Winters?" The question burst from him like accusation. Her eyes narrowed. "How dare you? Is he playing daddy to my son? The son you walked away from?" Her voice rose. "The son who spent his first month fighting to breathe while you disappeared? That son." Rain hammered against her apartment door as they faced each other across 5 years of silence, their breaths fogging the cold air between them, neither willing to be the first to acknowledge what they'd once been to each other. Have you ever stood face to face with someone who once knew every inch of your body, but now looks at you like a stranger? What word would you choose for that moment? Standing this close, Nathan caught the familiar scent of her hair. Different shampoo, but same woman underneath. His body remembered her before his mind could catch up, heartbeat accelerating like it always had in her presence. "I'm still his father," Nathan said, voice dropping. "Biology doesn't make you a father," she replied, arms crossed protectively. "Showing up does. David asked me to marry him last month," she said, her voice steady despite the tears gathering in her eyes. "He wants to adopt Ethan." The words hit Nathan like physical blows. "I came here to tell you that I'm not running anymore," he whispered. "I came to get my family back." Her palm cracked across his face with 5 years of abandoned fury. But when he caught her wrist, the electricity between them hadn't died. It had just been waiting. "Don't you dare," she hissed, tears threatening. "Don't you dare say family like you didn't sign divorce papers while I was carrying your child." "They lied to me," Nathan said, still holding her wrist. "My partner, the board, they said the scandal would destroy you too. That leaving was the only way to protect you both. Protect us." Her laugh was hollow. "I lost our apartment, my health insurance, my dignity. While I lost everything that mattered," he finished, voice breaking. "I believed I was keeping you safe from public humiliation. I was wrong." She tried pulling away, but his grip gentled, thumb brushing her pulse point. The touch sent sparks up her arm. Unwanted, undeniable. "Let go," she whispered, but the command lacked conviction. "I never stopped thinking about you," he admitted. "Stop. About us. There is no us." The tiny kitchen where they stood vibrated with tension, the refrigerator humming like a countdown timer, photographs of Ethan's childhood, moments Nathan had missed, watching from every surface. Something snapped between them, years of hurt colliding with physical memory. His mouth found hers, or hers found his. Impossible to tell who surrendered first. The kiss was anger and longing, punishment and need, bodies remembering what minds wanted to forget. She pushed him away, breathless, fingers touching her lips as if betrayed. "That shouldn't have happened," she said. "But it did." Well, have you felt betrayed by someone you loved? Did your body ever remember love when your mind was still holding on to hurt? Share your experience below. His phone rang in his pocket. Victoria again. Reality intruding. He silenced it without looking. Leah wiped her eyes, straightened her scrubs. "I have to get Ethan to school and go to work. You need to leave. I want to meet him. Properly. That's not your decision." The sound of a key in the front door silenced them both. The apartment door opened, revealing a tall man in hospital scrubs with Ethan riding his shoulders. "Honey, we're home early," David announced, his smile faltering as he registered Nathan's presence. Ethan peered down curiously. "Mommy, who's that man?" 3 adults froze, none knowing how to answer the most important question in the room. 2 men stood in her living room, one who had given her son his DNA, and one who had given him everything else. "David," Leah's voice trembled. This is Nathan Cole. David's expression shifted from confusion to recognition to protective caution. He lifted Ethan from his shoulders, placing him gently on the floor. "Hey, buddy, why don't you go play in your room for a minute?" David suggested, his voice deliberately light. "But who's that man?" Ethan persisted, staring at Nathan with innocent curiosity. Nathan couldn't look away from his son. Dark hair like Leah's, but eyes and chin unmistakably his own. 5 years old, a whole person who shared his blood, but not his name. "He's an old friend," Leah answered quickly. "Actually," Nathan stepped forward, ignoring Leah's warning glare. "I'm your father." The room froze in collective shock. "Nathan," Leah gasped. "Like my birth father?" Ethan asked, eyes widening. "The one in heaven." David's jaw tightened. "Ethan, please go to your room. Adults need to talk." "But now, please." When the boy's door closed, David turned to Nathan, voice controlled but lethal. "You don't get to walk in here and drop bombs on a child's life." "He deserves to know the truth," Nathan countered. "Truth?" David's laugh was bitter. "The truth is you left. I stayed. I was there for every fever, every nightmare, every school project." Ethan's toys lay scattered across the floor between the two men, primary colors against the beige carpet, a childhood being claimed from opposite sides of the room. What makes someone a real father? Biology or presence? Is blood stronger than the bonds formed through daily love and sacrifice? Tell me what you believe defines true parenthood. Leah moved between them. Protective mama bear awakened. "Both of you stop. This isn't about your egos. It's about Ethan." Nathan noticed how her body instinctively angled toward David. The comfort of established partnership versus the electric uncertainty between them. "I want to be part of his life," Nathan stated, the tech mogul accustomed to getting what he wanted. David's reply was gentle but firm. "You don't get to disrupt his world because you suddenly decided to care. He has a father." Ethan, who had crept back to listen from the hallway, looked up at Leah with innocent clarity. "But Mommy always said my real daddy was an angel watching from far away." The papers arrived at 8 a.m. Nathan Cole, worth $20 million, was suing for partial custody of the child he'd abandoned before birth. Leah's hand shook as she read the legal document. Words like paternity rights and visitation schedule reduced her son to a possession being claimed by a stranger who shared his DNA. "He can't do this," she whispered to David over breakfast after Ethan left for school. "He can't just appear after 5 years and demand custody. He has money for better lawyers than we could ever afford," David said, grim reality in his voice. The legal documents spread across her kitchen table like an invasion, official seals and cold language reducing her son to an asset being claimed by a corporation of one. Leah called in sick to work, spent the morning contacting attorneys who each quoted retainers larger than her monthly salary. By noon, 3 news outlets had somehow caught wind of the story. Tech billionaire's secret child and coal industry's heir in custody battle. Her phone exploded with texts from co-workers who'd seen the news. Neighbors knocked, claiming reporters had offered money for inside information. David called from the hospital. "They're here too. Someone leaked everything." "How could he do this?" Leah's voice broke. "After everything. Now he wants to make Ethan a public spectacle." "Maybe it wasn't him," David suggested. "Who else would benefit from this circus?" Her phone rang. Unknown number. Against better judgment, she answered. "Ms. Morgan? I represent Mr. Cole. He's requesting an immediate meeting. Have you ever been in a power imbalance with someone who once held your heart? How far would you go to protect your child from being hurt the way you were? Share your thoughts." The hotel suite Nathan had commandeered as a temporary office screamed wealth. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay, fresh flowers, private chef preparing lunch in the open kitchen. "What have you done?" Leah demanded, refusing the offered seat. Nathan looked genuinely confused. "What are you talking about?" "The lawsuit. The media. You're turning our lives into a sideshow." "I filed for visitation rights, yes, but I didn't alert any media," he insisted, running a hand through his hair. "That's the last thing I want." "Then who?" Her phone buzzed with a text message. "Unknown number. I have information about Nathan Cole that could help your case. Meet me tomorrow. He isn't who you think he is, or who he thinks he is." Attached was a photograph of a young Nathan with a man Leah had never seen before. The coffee shop informant passed her a manila envelope containing proof that the Nathan Cole she married had been built on carefully constructed lies. "I was his executive assistant during your marriage," the woman explained, eyes darting nervously around the cafe. "Victoria's father, Lawrence Brighten. He orchestrated everything." "What do you mean?" Leah asked, not touching the envelope. The embezzlement charges against Nathan were fabricated. Brighten wanted control of the company, so he created the scandal, then offered to save Nathan if he cut all personal ties that might generate negative press, including his pregnant wife. Leah's voice was flat. "You were the leverage they used against him," the woman confirmed. "Brighten convinced Nathan that staying with you would destroy you both." Steam rose from her untouched coffee as she read document after document. The cafe's ambient chatter fading as pieces of Nathan's fragmented past formed a picture she'd never suspected during their marriage. Nathan wasn't just a self-made tech genius. He was a foster kid who'd bounced through 13 homes, changed his name at 18, erased his past completely. The man in the photo was his biological father, serving life for attempted murder. No wonder he'd been terrified of scandal touching her and the baby. "Why tell me this now?" Leah asked. "Brighton's doing it again. The custody battle? It wasn't Nathan's idea. They convinced him it was the only way to have contact with his son without media involvement. That makes no sense. It does when you realize Victoria's planning to use your son as leverage in their upcoming merger announcement. Family man redeemed narrative sells better than abandoned pregnant wife. Have you ever discovered something about someone's past that explained their actions but didn't excuse them? Does understanding someone's trauma change how you feel about the pain they caused you?" Leah remembered the one night Nathan had truly broken down, awakening from a nightmare, shaking in her arms, refusing to explain what demons chased him in sleep. She'd held him until dawn, their bodies communicating what words couldn't. "Why should I believe you?" she finally asked. "Because I'm the one who delivered those divorce papers to him. I watched him sign them thinking he was protecting you, and I've regretted my part in it every day since." She drove to Nathan's hotel, envelope clutched beside her, determined to confront him, only to find Victoria, his California fiancée, answering his door in lingerie. "You must be the ex," Victoria said coolly. "Nathan's at an emergency meeting. Something about withdrawing a custody petition." Her eyes narrowed. "He didn't tell me why." Victoria placed her 5-carat diamond ring on his hotel desk and said 7 words that changed everything. "I won't compete with a ghost, Nathan. Goodbye." He stared at the ring, its facets catching afternoon light streaming through hotel windows. $2 million of clarity and color, yet nothing about it reflected the woman who'd worn it. "I saw your face when you came back from seeing them," Victoria continued, surprisingly calm. "In 3 years together, you never once looked at me the way you looked talking about her." "Victoria, do you even know my favorite color? Where I wanted a honeymoon? What I'm afraid of?" She shook her head. "Of course not. Because I was never real to you. Just convenient." Nathan couldn't deny it. Their relationship had been a business arrangement disguised as romance. Her father's investments for his respectable rehabilitation. "Your father set me up," he said quietly. "The embezzlement charges, the media stories about Leah. He orchestrated everything to separate us. And you let him," she replied unmoved. "That's the difference between you and me, Nathan. I'm walking away from something hollow. You walked away from something real." The ring caught the Seattle skyline's lights, spinning slightly on the polished wood like a tiny carousel of regret as Victoria closed the door behind her for the last time. When have you stayed in a relationship knowing your heart was elsewhere? What finally made you or your partner face the truth? Share your experience with walking away from what looks perfect but feels wrong. Nathan's phone rang. Lawrence Brighten demanding explanation for the withdrawn custody petition. Nathan ended the call without speaking, finally seeing the manipulation that had defined their relationship. He'd been so focused on building walls against his past that he'd let others determine his future. His attorney called next. The media is running wild with speculation. We need to issue a statement. No, Nathan said firmly. No more public statements. No more letting others control my narrative. He was drafting an email to his board, explaining his immediate resignation, when his phone lit up with Leah's name, the first time she called since he reappeared in Seattle. Her voice was tight with emotion. Ethan's in the hospital. It's his heart. The same condition, the one in your family medical history you never told me about. 5 years ago, Nathan walked away from a pregnant wife. Now he sat beside a hospital bed, watching his son's heartbeat on a monitor, knowing that rhythm carried a genetic flaw he'd passed down without warning. Hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, the cardiologist explained. It's hereditary. The heart muscle becomes abnormally thick, making it harder to pump blood. Nathan felt Leah's accusing stare burning into him. Did you know about this condition in your family? The doctor asked. Yes, Nathan admitted. My father had it, and his father. You never told me, Leah whispered, voice tight with controlled rage. I didn't think. That's right. You didn't think. Ethan lay small and pale against white hospital sheets, monitors beeping steady reassurance he was still fighting. Surgery was scheduled for morning, a procedure to prevent the thickening from worsening, to give his young heart a fighting chance. David arrived, still wearing scrubs from his shift, having rushed from pediatric oncology when he heard. He approached Ethan's bed with practiced clinical gentleness, checking 4 lines and monitors before his professional composure cracked, revealing the worried father underneath. Hey, brave guy, he whispered, smoothing Ethan's hair. David, the boy's voice was weak. Am I going to be okay? The best doctors are taking care of you, David promised. I'm not going anywhere. Nathan watched from the doorway, an intruder witnessing love he hadn't earned. When David noticed him, no hostility flashed in his eyes, just exhaustion and genuine concern for the child they both claimed. The pediatric ICU existed in its own time zone. Seconds stretched into hours as machines beeped, monitoring the most precious rhythm in the world. While outside the windows, Seattle continued under stars none of them could see. What would you do if your child was suffering because of something you could have prevented? How do we forgive ourselves for the harm our silence causes? Share your thoughts on healing from parental guilt. When Leah finally stepped out for coffee, Nathan found himself alone with David in the waiting room. I should have told her, Nathan said, breaking the tense silence. About my family's heart condition. David nodded. Yes, you should have. I erased my past so completely I convinced myself it couldn't touch my future. Nathan rubbed his face. I was wrong. He's strong, David offered unexpectedly. Ethan, he gets that from his mother. Something shifted between them. Not friendship, but recognition of their shared concern for the boy fighting behind glass doors. As dawn broke after Ethan's successful surgery, David found Nathan alone in the waiting room. I've seen how he looks at you, David said quietly, and how she does too. I've been borrowing a family that was never really mine, wasn't I? Before Nathan could respond, Leah appeared in the doorway, her face pale with exhaustion and a decision that would change all their lives. David packed his belongings with the careful precision of a man who always knew he was loving a family on borrowed time. You don't have to do this, Leah said, watching from the bedroom doorway as he emptied drawers that had held his clothes for 3 years. I think I do, he replied softly. I saw you two at the hospital, the way you moved around each other, like planets in orbit. You never looked at me that way. David, it's okay, he cut her off gently. I always knew Ethan wasn't mine by blood. I thought that didn't matter. But seeing you 3 together, he folded a sweater with deliberate focus. Some bonds can't be replaced. Leah's tears fell freely. You saved us. When Ethan was fighting to breathe in that NICU, and I had no one, you were there. And I'll always be there for him, David promised. Just not here. Nathan arrived as David carried boxes to his car. Their eyes met in a moment of awkward recognition. You're leaving? Nathan asked. Stepping back, David corrected. Not out. Ethan needs stability right now, not adults fighting over territory. Nathan surprised them both. He needs you in his life. You're the only father he's known. Winter sunlight caught in the crystal Ethan had made for David, World's Best Almost Dad, painted in wobbly children's letters, as David placed it carefully in his final box, the prism casting rainbows across the walls of the apartment he'd called home. Inside, Ethan was still recovering from surgery, confused by the changes swirling around him. "Why is David taking his stuff?" he asked Leah. "He'll still see you," she promised. "He'll always be part of your life. Because of my real dad coming back?" Ethan's perception cut through adult pretense. Have you ever had to choose between what your heart wants and what might be best for your child? What guided your decision? How do we balance our needs with our responsibilities as parents? After David left, the apartment felt hollow, charged with unresolved electricity when Nathan stopped by to check on Ethan. They circled each other in the kitchen, close enough to touch, but separated by years of hurt and revelation. "I can't trust you again," Leah whispered, inches from Nathan's face, their breath mingling. "But I can't stop wanting you either." Her phone rang, Nathan's business partner in California. "Nathan needs to know," the voice said when she answered. "The fraud allegations. They weren't a mistake. I set him up, and I can prove it now." The voice recording played through her phone speaker. "Get Cole to sign divorce papers. Cut all personal ties. Make him think it's to protect her. Then we can take control while he's isolated." Lawrence Brighton's voice was unmistakable, smug, calculating, every word a dagger into Nathan's past decisions. "We knew he'd never sell his shares unless he thought he was protecting you," Nathan's former CFO explained. "Your pregnancy complicated things." Brighton worried a child would make Nathan less focused on the company, more resistant to their guidance. Nathan paced Leah's living room. 5 years of manipulation finally clear. "They used my feelings for you against me. Play the next part," the CFO urged. Brighton's voice continued. "Once he signed everything over, crush the company, rebuild it under Victoria's name. The cold boy will never recover. They meant to destroy you all along," Leah realized. "Your company was just the beginning." Nathan stopped pacing. "Why are you giving me this now?" "Brighton's planning to announce your engagement to Victoria at the merger press conference. He'll control everything, your patents, your future projects, even your personal life. Using your son as a PR prop was the final straw for me." Evidence that Nathan was deliberately separated from Leah mounted with each new recording. Not just business manipulation, Brighton had hired photographers to follow them, planted stories about Leah being a gold digger, even manipulated Nathan's schedule to keep him away during her pregnancy complications. The Seattle rain pounded her kitchen window as the recording continued, each word washing away one version of their past and revealing another. A conspiracy built on Nathan's one vulnerability, his love for her. "I'm not asking you to forgive me," Nathan said when the recordings ended. "I made my choices, but at least now you know why." Their eyes met across the kitchen table. 5 years of hurt cracked open, revealing the raw connection that had never fully died. Have you ever discovered that what you believed about someone was based on lies told by others? How did it change your ability to forgive? Without words, they moved toward each other. Her fingers brushed his cheek. Tentative, questioning. His hands found her waist, pulling her closer with 5 years of pent-up longing. Their kiss began softly, an exploration of familiar territory changed by time, then blazed into urgency. Clothes fell away, barriers dissolving as they reclaimed each other's bodies, rediscovering paths and pleasures that had never been forgotten. Wrapped in sheets, still warm from their reconciliation, Nathan's phone lit up with emergency alerts. His company stock was in free fall, his reputation under attack again. But this time, the allegations included evidence that he'd hidden a child and abandoned a pregnant wife. Someone was using their reunion against him, and only one person knew he was in Seattle with Leah. The headlines splashed across every financial news outlet. Tech wunderkind Nathan Cole's secret family, abandoned pregnant wife, and hidden love child exposed. Leah's phone rang nonstop. Reporters, neighbors, even her boss asking if the scandal would affect patient privacy at the clinic. Ethan's school called, concerned about media vans parked across the street. "It's Victoria," Nathan confirmed, scanning reports on his laptop. "These photos of us together were taken yesterday." She must have followed me after our confrontation. Their intimate reunion had become public consumption. Ethan's existence revealed to a world hungry for tech billionaire gossip. What do we do? Leah asked, closing blinds against telephoto lenses. I end this, Nathan replied, voice hardening into the CEO who had rebuilt an empire from ashes. No more hiding. No more letting others control my story. He called his board of directors, activating the speakerphone so Leah could hear. I'm holding an emergency press conference. Today, Nathan, be reasonable, his chairwoman cautioned. Let PR handle this. Your engagement announcement is canceled, he interrupted, along with the merger talks with Brighten Ventures. You can't be serious. The Brighten deal is worth billions. So is my family, Nathan replied simply. Camera flashes exploded outside her modest apartment building. Reporters calling questions like hungry wolves. The ordinary street transformed into a battleground where their private pain became public consumption. Nathan stood at the podium, Leah beside him by choice, not obligation. He spoke without notes, without corporate polish. 5 years ago, I made the worst mistake of my life, he began. I allowed myself to be convinced that leaving my wife and unborn child was somehow protecting them. I was manipulated by people who wanted my company more than they cared about human lives. What would you sacrifice to protect someone you love from public humiliation? Is there a price too high for redemption? Share your thoughts on choosing between success and personal integrity. Watching from a monitor backstage, Victoria's face tightened with fury as Nathan systematically exposed her father's manipulation, backed by recordings and documents. I'm stepping down as CEO, effective immediately, Nathan continued. Some costs are too high, even for success. I lost 5 years with my son. No company is worth that price. The press conference was set for noon. Nathan had drafted his statement. The truth about the manipulation, his abandoned family, his plans to step down as CEO. Are you sure? Leah asked, holding his hand out of camera view. You built that company from nothing. His answer was interrupted by Ethan running into the room, now recovered from surgery. Mom says you're my real dad, he said simply. Are you staying this time? Every camera captured the moment that would define Nathan Cole far beyond any technology he'd ever created. 5 years ago, Nathan Cole walked away from love for an empire of silicon and stock options. Today, he walked away from that empire for a second chance at what really mattered. The fallout was exactly as expected. Brighten Ventures stocks plummeted. Victoria disappeared to Europe. Tech blogs debated Nathan's decision endlessly, some calling it a redemption story, others declaring his career finished. Nathan didn't read any of it. Instead, he rented a house on Puget Sound. Nothing extravagant, just room for 3 people to breathe and heal. A place with a yard where Ethan could play catch with both his fathers. Because David remained part of their evolving family circle, his medical expertise having helped save Ethan's life twice now. Are you sure about this? Leah asked one evening, watching Nathan help Ethan with science homework instead of attending a tech conference where he'd once been keynote speaker. About giving up California, he clarified. About giving up everything you built. Nathan looked at Ethan, head bent over a project about the human heart. The organ that had nearly separated them forever, now bringing them together and healing. I didn't give up anything worth keeping, he said simply. The legal battles with Brighten took months. Lawsuits, countersuits, patent disputes. Nathan fought with the same brilliance that had built his company. But his motivation had fundamentally changed. He wasn't protecting wealth anymore. He was securing his son's future. Their new home overlooked Puget Sound, modest by his former standards, but expansive in what mattered. Space for Ethan to play, rooms filled with morning light, and windows that faced the future rather than hiding from the past. What does true redemption look like to you? Is it possible to rebuild something better from the ruins of what was broken? Share your stories of second chances and whether they're earned or freely given. 6 months after his resignation, Nathan surprised even himself by launching a new company, focused not on profit, but on medical technology for children with cardiac conditions like Ethan's. David joined as medical director, Their former rivalry transformed into partnership for a cause greater than themselves. On Ethan's 6th birthday, as Nathan watched his son blow out candles, Leah slipped a small gift box into his hand. Inside was a simple key ring holding 2 keys, one to their home and one to her heart, with a note that read, "Some doors once closed should stay locked forever, but some deserve to be reopened. I'm choosing to believe in second chances." Nathan looked up to find her watching him, her hand resting protectively over her stomach. "I hope you're ready for another chance," she whispered. "This one's coming in about 7 months." The journey that began with an abandoned pregnancy had come full circle to a chosen one. This time with both of them all in, eyes wide open, choosing love over everything else.